This single thing is the most important part of your real estate contract. And most of my clients get it, but I'm absolutely sick and tired of explaining it to other real estate agents. So I'm going to do it in this video right after I ask you to please join our 1,000 subscriber giveaway by subscribing to the channel, and make sure you hit the like button so this information gets out to other people who can then understand that if this one thing is done wrong, it may cost you your dream home. And if you're an agent and you're doing this, please stop right now. So make sure you hit this like button to get this out to other people so you don't end up in real estate jail. All right, let's get into it. So in all of our real estate contracts that we write, or any contract for that matter, there is often a term inserted that says time is of the essence. In this previous video, I went over the fact that a contract is basically made up of terms and conditions. And yes, that is true. However, time is another factor within those terms and conditions. So if you don't do a certain thing by a certain day, you no longer have a contract. And here is the reason this is so important. On the last page of the contract of purchase and sale here in my marketplace of Surrey, BC, there is a spot labeled for the acceptance of both parties. What that means is if the offer is not signed off on and not accepted by both parties fully and completely by that time, then there is no contract. I love the way Finley Law says it here. Either you're pregnant or you're not. Being in a contract is kind of like being pregnant. You either are or you are not. There is no such thing as being kind of under contract. And courts should apply a fairly black line to whether you are in a contract or you are not. And if you agree to the contract after the time that says you agreed to the contract, you did not agree to the contract. But let me explain why this is important to you if you're buying or selling a property, or if you're an agent that's currently breaking the rules. That acceptance line in the contract clearly has a time that the offer is open until. So if I'm a buyer offering to purchase your property, I may submit my offer today at noon, and I might leave it open till 10 o'clock. Or if I know the negotiation is going to be a long one because we're not coming together on price, I may leave that thing open for 7 days. But that time of which my offer is no good, well, it's written right there in the contract. So if you as the seller don't accept my offer by that time, we're not pregnant.
But what happens if your offer sucks and I want to counter it?
Don't worry, I'm getting to that. So now I've received your offer as the seller and I'm going to counter it back. Well, if I've left it open for 7 days, I can counter that offer back to you looking for initials on things like price or other terms, but that acceptance time is still open. So I've sent it back to you and we have not yet passed that time. But most offers are open just for that day or maybe as much as 24 hours. So if I know that that negotiation is going to take longer, or if I didn't get a chance to respond to you fast enough, I have to cross out that time that's currently on the contract and extend it. This is totally fine and okay to do as long as by the time I get you the contract back, the original time has not passed. If that original time has passed, that contract has expired and we can no longer use that contract at all. The buyer will then have to resubmit a fresh offer. Now this could go back and forth multiple times. I as the buyer could send you an offer that's open until 7 o'clock tonight. At 6:30, you respond to me and open that contract up until 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. Then at that point, 6:30 tomorrow morning, I counter it back to you and leave it open again till 7 o'clock the next night. This can go back and forth unless that deadline is 7 o'clock and I respond to you at 7:01. Well, now the contract is totally dead. And here's the part where most agents really piss me off. Often the buyers and sellers agreeing to the contract don't understand the law around whether or not we're pregnant. But you as the real estate professional in the transaction, you better know exactly what you're doing. And it's not okay to say,
I know I got you the contract back at 7:05, but it's okay.
no. It's not okay. And technically you don't have a contract. But let's now keep working through this scenario. So I sent you a contract. It was open till 7 o'clock tonight. You got it back to me at, let's say, 7:01 or 10:30 that night. And now both buyer and seller think that they have an accepted offer. So everybody proceeds until one of those parties changes their mind. Maybe the buyer felt they paid too much or life circumstance changed for the seller, and one of those parties no longer wants the transaction to come together? Well, if at that point they really want out of the contract, they can go back and discover whether or not they actually had a contract in the first place. And if they took that as far as going to court, well, the judge is going to say you never had an agreement because the time to come to that agreement on paper had passed and a new offer was not prepared. So the current contract is void because you weren't pregnant in the first place. But it's a negotiation tool that a lot of agents use in order to have that really tight window in order to respond. They think they're going to pressure the seller into accepting faster. And I can appreciate the negotiation tactics here. However, you got to work on getting people together in order to sell homes, and that might take some time for people to come to terms. Or maybe they're just at dinner with their family. There can be a lot of moving parts due to things like availability or just what people have going on in their lives. So as an agent, you should try and leave the contract open with enough time, because if you do run into one of those other agents that does not get back to you in time, and then they get back to you later in time with an expired contract, you don't have a contract and you could be putting yourself in a terrible position, or worse yet, putting your client in a terrible position. And time being of the essence doesn't just have to do with the date of acceptance. It has to do with all the other timelines also set out in the contract. As the late, great Barbara Bell Olson put out in one of her teachings, this can also apply to the subject removal time. Let's say, for instance, you missed a subject on the subject removal, or where something else happened where subjects did not get removed in time and the deal is dead. Barbara pointed out that some licensees attempt to revive an expired contract by having the buyer and seller sign the subject removal addendum after the time for the removal of the subject clauses, or even worse, having them sign an addendum attempting to revive the previous contract. And I love it in bold here. She says an expired contract cannot be revived. The licensee should draft a new contract of purchase and sale for all of the parties to sign. Still don't believe me? Because trust me, a lot of people I talk to don't believe me. Let's go back over a decade to February 2011, where the Real Estate Council of BC put out a similar notice. They not only talk about the scenario I started off with how a counter should go back and forth and the acceptance time related to those, but they even touch on Barbara's point about the revival of an expired contract. So now here is the reality of the situation. A contract negotiation can be really hot, emotional, and go really, really quickly, or it could get dragged out. I just want you to remember this one thing. If you go by the acceptance date in a contract without accepting fully and completely that contract, you don't have a baby.
Contract.
Sorry, you don't have a contract. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, the reality of the situation is this does happen all the time. And as long as the buyer and seller both want to proceed, nobody is the wiser. But as the saying goes in real estate, it's not a problem until it's a problem. So make sure the most important piece of your puzzle that is your real estate contract is making sure things are done on time as stated in the contract. Thank you so much for watching. Please check out another couple of videos while you're here on the channel. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm, and we'll see you in a couple of days.